It's always interesting having Reed on because I'm always curious, will my model line up with his? And I'll let everyone know. There's a couple we do, but there's a couple we don't. So we'll hit some of those and hey, one of us will be right and you get a winning play on the show, guaranteed.
Welcome to First Strike, only on VSiN, the sports betting network. Here's your hosts, Dave Ross and Rob Moreno.
We are back, First Strike on VSiN. Dave Ross here with you. Rob Moreno is going to join the program as he always does, El Modelo, with his picks here for UFC 330. But look who it is, America. The one and only, the father of MMA analytics, Reed Kuhn, joins the program. Reed, always great to have you back on. Everybody give him a follow on X at Fightnomics, the author of a book of the same name. Before we break into the two title fights here at UFC 330, I see you've got new digs behind you. It looks spectacular. How is the new setup coming along?
Yeah, I think I debuted the lava bar that I'm starting to call it, the new and improved Fightnomics lounge in my basement. Spectacular bar setup. I debuted that on First Strike maybe last month or the month before, and now my office is finally ready. What you can't see is actually like a big accent wall, and I have a giant poster of my book cover on the wall. But yeah, it's an upgrade. Been a long time coming, trying to get a nice comfy spot. Now I got my screen set up. I can do a lot more work.
It looks fantastic, brother. It's always great to have you on First Strike. You know that. And again, I always say that because it's true. You were the first guy to kind of put pen to paper way back in the day and find advantages through numbers here analytically when you break down these fights. With those two title fights that we have, and when you have Islam Makhachev, and you could say top of the food chain, arguably, right? You look at those pound for pound lists, he might be that guy in a title fight against Ian Machado Garry. And Gary's one of those guys, Reed, that I wonder if there's a stigma or if that stigma is gone, that he was more hype than he actually is substance as he tries to get this crown away from Islam Makhachev. What are the numbers showing you in this main event?
Yeah, this is basically going to play out as a striker versus grappler, which is no surprise when you have Makhachev involved. He definitely owns the grappling game. But one thing you look for is what is the takedown defense of the opponent? And how good are they at keeping this on the feet? And those are two things that Garry has actually been very good at. This is not the first grappler that he's faced, and yet he has managed to keep the fight standing almost 90% of the time, basically like 89% of the time, which is very unusual. You know, you think about half the fight takes place on the feet, and then there's clinch, and then there's ground game. He has a very good way of keeping the fight up, which is where he has an advantage. You look at the size, the guy is enormous for a welterweight. And so that's something that I don't factor into the models, is the fact that Makhachev earned most of those high performing metrics, but against smaller opponents.
That's right.
He just recently moved up. So while he does have welterweight experience, it's not a lot. The statistics that I'm looking at were earned at lightweight against smaller opponents. So that is an unusual factor here. When I ran the models, even with Makhachev as a heavy favorite, they actually came out as a wash, which means, yes, I agree he's a favorite, but there's something in there I'm not seeing value in. And that is one of the tricky things about neural nets and machine learning, is that sometimes you can't really explain why it's saying something, but learning to back off what looks like a layup for a grappler is actually something that caught my eye. And then you layer in the factor that Garry has very good takedown defense, 80%. He's especially good in the clinch, which is where Makhachev lands most of his takedowns. That's what he does. Push you against the fence, eventually drag you down. Garry has that size. He might be able to use the underhooks and really elevate this and keep it standing, at least for an extended period of time. And so during those distance exchanges, he's going to be the busier fighter, the longer fighter, much longer fighter. And you got to think like he might be winning those exchanges. And when does he get taken down? So while I say that this is a pass, it's not factoring in the size. If there's some folks out there that are like, is it crazy to think that Garry might have a chance here? I'm not disagreeing with that. I think he does have a chance, especially if he is able to survive those clinch attempts and switch around, create distance, work some strikes, and repeat. That's the cycle. Either way, my angle here is on the over. I don't think Garry goes down easy. He certainly doesn't put Makhachev away very easily, because Makhachev also has the outlet of just continuously diving for takedowns. So that's how I think this fight evolves. I think it's just going to be back and forth. It'll be interesting to see how long they spend in each position: distance, clinch, ground. And Garry's profile is someone who is good at keeping this exactly where he wants it. Obviously, he's facing a different animal than Makhachev, who's also very good at keeping the fight where he wants it. He spends basically half of all octagon time on the ground controlling his opponent. And when you do that 2.5 minutes out of every round, you're probably going to win the round. And you're also going to get opportunities for submissions, which is what happens with Makhachev and even Khabib before him. So, everybody knows the narrative here. The statistics do back that up, but I am not just saying that this is going to be a layup for Makhachev the way maybe the early odds implied. So he's still a favorite, but I'm going to be passing on the money line.
And right now, Makhachev right now is a 340 betting favorite against Ian Machado Garry, plus 270 on the comeback. You mentioned Khabib Nurmagomedov in the corner, obviously, of Makhachev, so you know that's going to be some of the things that are taught and drilled into him, looking for those submissions, as you say. That total on the round prop here in this championship bout is set at 4.5. It is juiced heavily to the over at $1.80. But to your point, Reed, if you're on the Makhachev side and the respect level that your model is showing here for Garry, that the better price point to lay, if you're going to lay it here, would be on the over $1.80 versus Makhachev at 340. Does that make intuitive sense to you?
Yes. Yeah. If he's doing what he wants to do, he clearly stretches this fight. If he's not doing what he wants to do, if the size is too much of a factor here, he's not going to go down easily. And even if he does go down, Gary's going to be in a very weird spot of like not wanting to chase him. So Garry cannot be too aggressive, even in the striking game, because when you're too aggressive, you press forward, which is his nature. He is the busier striker. You then open yourself up to counters, changing levels. So I don't think, unfortunately, I think Garry does have to play it conservative. It's going to be a very uphill battle. I do think in the end, Makhachev probably wrestles his way to victory, but I think based on the prices here, you got to go with the over.
Yeah, I like that. And with that angle that you have, Reed, I'll be looking for the fight, obviously, to go the distance, either man to win by decision might be a good way to go as well. But I'm picking up what you're putting down there in that main event. And before we move on, just your thoughts when you've watched Ian Machado Garry, because I don't think my opinion ever really changed too much. I think early on, people kind of looked at it as a Paddy Pimblett type. And do we really take these Euros that seriously? I think Paddy has kind of changed that perception of himself. We take him seriously, and it sounds like the model does too, right? That Machado Garry has arrived.
Yeah, that's right. He has good numbers. And again, the position game, which is it's actually not a statistic that's readily available, to be honest, to the public. I mean, you got to buy Fightmetric data to get this level of detail. But the fact that he keeps it standing so long, in particular, his takedown defense in the clinch is actually quite good. Normally, that's an area where the takedown success rate goes up. It's in the clinch versus shooting from a distance. That's going to be the lowest success rate. And so Makhachev and others before him, those guys that push you against the fence and really wet blanket you and eventually get you down on the third, fourth attempt, it's being able to defend those situations, create space, force it standing, and reset. That is a very subtle skill. It's hard to find in the data. And Garry is one of those guys. He's very big and he uses that very well. It's like John Jones. There's people who use their size and reach, and then there's guys, unfortunately, who don't. So Garry learning how to use that size and reach, create space, leverage that range that he has, that's a skill set in and of itself, let alone from the advantage of being the bigger guy. So those are things I'm looking for that are not always apparent in the numbers.
He's a great comp, by the way. I know a smaller version of, say, a John Jones, but the way he uses those leg kicks, use the jab, and kind of keep fighters away when you need to keep them away, that's a great comp there for Ian Machado Garry. Fascinated because, again, kind of like to talk about with Garry, where the reputation might have changed through the years. Feels like Mackenzie Dern, too, right? Boy, she can't strike with anybody. We know that. We know she's the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, men or women. You can make that argument when it gets to a Mackenzie Dern. And now she finds herself as a champion defending here against Gillian Robertson, who's no slouch in her own right on the ground, that's for sure. Mackenzie is over a $2 betting favorite to retain this championship. Again, potentially 5-round fight. What are the numbers showing you for the new champion in Mackenzie Dern?
Yeah, Dern has definitely been hit or miss. No pun intended. I think it's usually when she tries to fall in love with her striking and show it off, that's when she gets into trouble. She's earned 2 knockdowns. It's not like she's not slinging heat, but she's also been dropped 6 times. That is not a favorable ratio. In this fight, however, Robertson has even worse striking metrics. I mean, she is absolutely a wrestle-first fighter. I've known that for years because, honestly, I used to consult to her back in the day when she was on her tear, rolling through people. And I think honestly, she went under the radar for a while. She was working with Dean Thomas, and she really was demonstrating great wrestling. There is that subtlety difference between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Dern clearly has the scrambles and the defense as well as the offense on the submission game. Robertson is just great at dragging you down and getting you tired into a position. Now, she does have submissions, but usually I feel like it's a war of attrition there. She grinds you down and eventually gets it. Dern has a little bit more skill. She can pop a lock or a limb or a neck from different locations, and you've actually seen her scramble on the takedowns, and that's an interesting difference between her and a traditional wrestler. So I do think that this is going to be a grappling match. The stand-up game, Robertson doesn't want to be there. Dern, traditionally, that's not her strength, but her statistics are actually very favorable, and she has faced superior strikers. So the fact that her metrics are decent, they're way better than Robertson's. So I think, strangely enough, Robertson wants a wrestling match. She doesn't want a jiu-jitsu match. So she wants to be on top, smothering, not allowing opportunities for submissions. Dern is going to be looking to scramble because, honestly, when you are a great grappler, you basically allow people to take you down. If you look at Dern's takedown defense, it's actually below average, which is odd for a grappler. But then you think about it and say, oh, she's willing to fall on her back, invite you into guard, and then play that game where she's got four limbs to fight with. So that's not, when you really see the elite jiu-jitsu players, that's what you see. They actually have bad defense on takedowns because they're willing to go there. So I think Dern does win stand up. She'll be the busier fighter. She'll land more damage, and Robertson will basically be only playing that game, waiting enough time to go for a takedown. And I think Robertson, once she's on the ground, it's going to be back and forth. I do see close rounds because neither one of them is going to have a huge opportunity. I don't know if there's going to be a knockdown at all, but even submission locks and escapes, I don't know how definitive that will be. Like, what do you judge when they're scrambling and maybe sweeping each other, and they each spend around a minute or two in control? These might be very hard rounds to judge. The numbers do lean Dern here, so I will say that after all of that, she does have the advantage in the stand-up, and she has the credentials on the mat. But Robertson could really stretch this. She might win a round or two. Maybe you take Robertson with points, expecting her to win a round or two if she gets into a position where she can hold it long enough. But Dern does have more skills. She has still been getting better, at least in terms of performances. I've seen her do different things that sometimes just weren't there. And then there's also the wild card of, which Mackenzie Dern is showing up. Sometimes we've seen an absolute monster versus someone who just didn't have the gas tank. So all that said, this one, the numbers do clearly lean Dern. And that's because I think she will have an edge in both situations. She has an edge on the feet. She has the skill set on the ground. And they're both going to have winning moments on the ground. It's just not enough to finish.
Right now, Reed, to your point there, you can get Gillian Robertson plus 5.5 points here, about minus $1.15 we're seeing out there in the marketplace. What's also interesting that your numbers do lean you towards Mackenzie Dern. She's a big favorite here, minus 225. But the over 3.5 is juiced, it's minus 220. So again, if you were looking to lay it, I mean, look, Mackenzie Dern can submit anybody. We get that, whether it's off or back or, once that fight does get down to the ground. So maybe you're holding your breath that they're rolling there for 3.5 rounds potentially. But is that something that you would look at versus laying the big price point with Mackenzie and saying, I do think this is going championship rounds here deep into the third for that over at minus 220?
Yeah, she's still capable of getting submissions late in the game. Remember, one of the things in the book that does hold is that limb locks, the likelihood of locking in one of those goes down very quickly into the fight because of sweat and fatigue. It's just a difficult thing to hang on to. Rear naked chokes, however, are the one that buck that trend. That is the one, it's the most successful submission rate. It's the one that you can still pull off late in the game because you're using two arms, not one. You have body control and you have multiple attempts. Wait until you get that neck. And once you lock it in, it's hard to get out. So she has shown that she can do that. Now, she even has an armbar submission. Just glancing at the stats here, she does have a very late armbar submission over Rebus. But she's been going the distance lately. Dern has been trying to fight all around fight. She hasn't necessarily been putting people away once she's meeting those bigger top elite fighters. So I don't know if she puts it away early. I think this probably does take a while to evolve. Robertson's no slouch on the mat, as we know, so therefore her defense should be on point. So I would lean the over on this one into championship rounds. It doesn't mean a finish can't happen, especially if someone's gassing out in the fourth or the fifth, and they're getting the back. That's how a finish happens. But I don't know if anybody's getting put away right out of the gates.
That's why you got to read Fightnomics, by the way. I have read another book since your book, Reed. My mom wrote a book, so I've read that one. But your book still is the one there. I need to go reread it. I think that is fantastic information right there, as always. Let's talk about some of the fights that you've detailed here. Edson Barboza, fan favorite. Love to bet Edson back in his heyday. He's a big underdog here against Esteban Rivovich. And right now, Rivovich is almost a $6 betting favorite against the Brazilian in Barboza, plus 425. Is there any value that the numbers show you here in this fight?
The models definitely lean Ribovich. It's hard. I think this is an age gap issue because age is so predictive. It tends to dominate some of the other skill sets. When you look at them side by side, first of all, very few takedowns between them. I think you can expect a striking duel. Both are very good. Obviously, Barboza hits like a tank. He's got crazy leg kicks. He can finish you multiple ways with strikes. He is over 40 years old. And so Ribovich at 30 years old does have that youth advantage. That translates into more durability and faster response time. And just Barboza is going to lose his edge just in being able to play defense. And he has been dropped 9 times in his career. He's not only over 40, he's one of the most damaged fighters active in the UFC today. I had some stats that I tweeted a couple of weeks ago on who are the most damaged fighters still active. He's one of them. So I think that's the risk factor here. That's what we're seeing in the numbers. It's cumulative damage and age differential. Otherwise, what the numbers say is, yes, expect a striking duel. Ribovich is pretty accurate. He will be outranged. So he's going to have to be aggressive to close that distance, but that's his nature. He's an extremely high-paced striker, lots of combinations, keeps you moving backwards. And maybe that's what he needs to do against a long-range, dangerous striker. And Barboza is to, push him back against the fence, cut off that the evasive maneuvers that he does have, and then finish him on the fence line. I think someone's probably going to go down at some point in 15 minutes because we're not going to spend any time on the ground, and that's a long time for them to be slinging leather.
If you're eating strikes, somebody's going to go out. It might be the older man here. Hearts with Barboza, but the head might be with Ribovich in this matchup. Maybe a similar fate could befall Charles Johnson here. He's a big underdog against Jose Ochoa. Ochoa minus 440 we're seeing here, plus 340 here, the comeback on Johnson. What are the numbers dictating here? Should it be as lopsided as it appears on paper?
Charles Johnson's one of those guys that's kind of pleasantly surprised over the years. He's been hit or miss, but he's a dangerous fighter. But you called it out. There's a 10-year age gap. Ochoa is definitely an up-and-comer southpaw. He's a little bit smaller than Johnson will be, which is maybe unusual because it's also a little bit harder to cut weight as you get older. And so you tend to see guys having to move up. And so the younger guys can cut more weight and they can pack more frame size into a weight class. But here we are. Ochoa is a fast-paced guy, not as much sample size that I have to work with here, but his knockdown rate is above Johnson's. And Johnson has been damaged. He has been dropped 3 times. His defense is a little bit looser than Ochoa. So again, I don't foresee a lot of takedowns in this. Johnson does have some, but it's well below the average in terms of attempt rate. So if they are striking at range, you got to go with youth again in this situation, despite some range differential. And again, we also see Ochoa is the more aggressive guy. So he's going to push forward, close the distance, and maybe that's where he gets it done. They're both pretty accurate, but the defense on the Johnson side, maybe that's a slightly bigger liability, and also the cumulative damage. So the models do come up for Ochoa. It's just not a huge lean because I don't have a ton of data to work with. I mean, he's at 50 minutes. And I think my models tend to be a little bit more hesitant when we don't have the sample size.
It's so funny because we talk about whether certain fights are going to qualify for your model. I wonder if your model can take into account a guy coming out of retirement, a guy like Jalen Turner coming back to the UFC here as a favorite here against Fernandez. And Kai Fernandez is plus $1.35. I'm seeing minus $1.62 on the Jalen Turner side. I love backing Jalen Turner, but I guess my question, Reed, would be, where's the motivation? Hopefully he's remotivated to get back into the UFC.
Yeah, and that outside of the cage stuff, it is important in a fight like this. Unfortunately, it's not something I can factor into the models. What's interesting is that these guys are almost identical age. They're off by maybe 2 months. But Turner has always been enormous for his weight class. He's got a huge range, 77-inch range versus 73 on Fernandez. The height differential is going to be 6 inches. So Turner is going to look like he's in a different weight class. Is he the tarantula? Is that his nickname?
Yeah, he's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he kind of looks like, I mean, he crouches down. He looks like a giant spider, very Anderson Silva-esque. So that said, like if we ignore that where the models are, I think Turner is, I think, a slight favorite. The models do have a lean his way, even slightly above where the price was when I last ran it. So I do see maybe a little bit of value in Turner. It's a fraction of a unit play for me, is the lean for Turner. I think this is a huge step up for Fernandez. And if you look at his knockdown rate, Fernandez actually is the highest knockdown rate on the entire card. I have a graph of that I just shared on Twitter, where you can actually see the knockdown rates of all the fighters. So Fernandez, relatively small sample size, it's abnormally high. He scored 4 knockdowns in short order. Turner has scored 9 in his career and also has a very good knockdown rate. It's just not as high as Fernandez. I do expect some regression to the mean on that side. But the liability here is that Turner does have bad defense, and it's notable. Like, I haven't lined the defensive striking metric for the whole card, but it's got to be down there as one of the worst. So that is a liability against a young guy who hits really hard in Fernandez. That said, the models do lean Turner, and he does have the experience. I mean, he has faced solid competition, and he does also have submissions because long limbs help you do lots of things in jiu-jitsu. He does have that edge if it goes to the ground. Not that that's guaranteed. Both guys not super aggressive with wrestling, but Turner does have the submissions if it ends up there. And that's why I think there's an overall lean his way.
Note to Jalen Turner, if you get a guy like, say, Renato Moicano, and you have him out, finish the job because the fight's not over until the referee stops the fight. It was going to be interesting to see Jalen back in there in the octagon. Vicente Luque is still kicking here, Reed. He's still back after another veteran against another veteran, Tracy Gore here. And right now, you can get Vicente about even money I'm seeing out there in the marketplace, small lean to Gore. What are you seeing here? And Luque is one of those guys, man, I do wonder where the head's at sometimes because I don't think we doubt the ability that he brings inside the octagon.
Yeah, I think one of the most mind-blowing stats on this whole card is that Luque is only 34 years old.
Wow.
Ridiculous to me. He has almost 4 hours of octagon time and has been competing for over a decade. And you realize he came in, I think, off the Ultimate Fighter TV show way back in the day and has just been grinding it out ever since. It seems like he fights all the time. He's fought the who's who of welterweight. He has moved up to middleweight, but he's not giving up any size disadvantage. So there was a point where he was a dog. He was like plus 130 at some point, and I grabbed that, honestly. I think he is a live dog here. He definitely has superior experience. Trishan Gore, 0 for 4 knockdown ratio. So has yet to drop someone and has been dropped 4 times. That is unusual. I did not expect to see that either. When you line up the striking metrics, Gore actually has slightly lower accuracy and lower defense. So that's also not in his favor. So if this is standing, I think Luque has the advantages of power for sure. He's more accurate, a little bit more evasive. Might not be the slickest game, but he knows how to put people down, and he's done it 11 times. On the ground, he also has submissions, and you got to be careful with him. You can't just dive forward and do a takedown when Luque is going to wrap you up in a Bravo choke. So I think this is maybe an uphill battle for Gore. He is the fresher guy. I think just, he only has 1 hour of octagon time versus 4, but the damage that he's taken in that time is actually surprising. So yeah, I see a lot of reasons to back what I thought was going to be the dog. It might not be a dog come fight night. I think Luque, I think there's value here.
I'm right there with you, Reed. I love when the numbers align. If you can still get a plus in front of Vicente Luque's name, you should scoop that up. It might not be available come Saturday night. Reed, you're the best, man. Again, Fightnomics for people that don't know, they got to check out the book. Also, where else can they access your information? I follow you, obviously, on Twitter and get some of your great nuggets that you give there. But can people still access your book?
The book, it's out there. It's out there on Amazon. What you're seeing over my shoulder is like among the last 10 copies that I have. So but you can buy copies on Amazon. And then when it comes to numbered events, I'll share some of my Uber tapes every week. X really is the place where I share most of my graphs, and then actual picks for numbered events only are on Yahoo Sports.
Well, we love your information, man. You're the best. And there's a reason why we call you the godfather of analytics when it comes to MMA. And that's a really good thing. Reed Kuhn, everybody give him a follow at Fightnomics out there on Twitter. We're going to come back with El Modelo, Rob Moreno, see if his numbers will line up with Reed's and mine. That's all next right here on First Strike.
You're tuned in to First Strike, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue First Strike here on VSiN. Dave Ross and Rob Moreno coming at you. Great having Reed Kuhn on this week for this show as well. And Rob, we always say this each and every week. If you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber as of yet, $9.99. It's an intro offer. Yes, there are year-long packages you can get for 50% off, but right now, $9.99. You're not just going to get our picks on the UFC each and every week. You can get our football picks. College football is right around the corner as well. Baseball's still wrapping up. And don't look now. Okay, you can look. Basketball is coming right around the corner as well. We're already getting opening day numbers out there in the association. So, Rob, no better time than the present. $9.99 for that intro offer.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready for all these sports to be happening at the same time. But that's why you need something like VSiN. If you're not signed up, what are you waiting for? I mean, you mentally cannot handicap or follow every single sport as seriously as you think our guys do. We got a guy for every single sport. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't even thinking about the NBA, but you're right. It is sneakily right around the corner again. That calendar just moves so fast.
We had Jonathan Von Tobel on. JVT was on with me and Jensen Lewis, shameless plug, on VSiN by the Books, weekdays 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. He's told me he already likes the game on opening night coming up for the Celtics and the Pistons. So again, that's why you got to be a VSiN Pro subscriber. Hey, we do. We give deference to Reed Kuhn because I call him the father of analytics when it comes to MMA because nobody really had done it. And Rob, like your model and your numbers, which are spectacular, I think we kind of go back to the origin story of Reed to kind of get us kind of wet that whistle for MMA betting and really digging into the numbers. And you're a numbers guy, right? So was that kind of how that manifested for you to get your El Modelo up and running?
100%. When we first started First Strike, when I guess 2.0 was when it officially became a weekly podcast from VSiN. Yeah, Reed Kuhn was obviously a staple in the show. And his book, he was nice enough to gift us a couple copies. I still have it. I should have put it up. I always forget to put it up when he's on. But yeah, I think I was always into the analytical part of sports betting, whether it was in the NBA, and actually speaking of Jonathan Von Tobel, he did an NBA model for a year. Yep. He did an NFL model. It was like, it always piqued my brain, but I love the UFC. And so when I discovered someone who is doing that in the UFC space, I was like, this is it. This is what this is why my numbers brain has been waiting for. And yeah, I dove in, and it's obviously not as advanced or as, I don't know. He's been doing it much longer. We'll just put it that way. And he sounds much better. It's always a tough situation when he's on the same episode because I have to come after him and give my model. And I'm like, I don't sound as eloquent as he does, but we love Reed. No. And yes, he's essentially the reason that El Modelo exists.
You're both crushing the game. And by the way, Jonathan Von Model was one of my the favorite nicknames I saw.
I forgot about the name.
It's so good, Jonathan Von Model. Let's get to some of those model plays here because I think as Reed pointed out in the main event with this on Makhachev against Ian Machado Garry here for the championship, and you're looking at 4.5, that maybe the model does respect Garry, even if it doesn't lean his way. And I love the way he phrased it. It was kind of like it makes him rethink what the model might not be taking into account. But there's something there that's saying, hold off, even though the lean is towards Makhachev, that maybe not at that price point at minus 340.
Yeah, so it's always interesting having Reed on because I'm always curious, will my model line up with his? And I'll let everyone know. There's a couple we do, but there's a couple we don't. So we'll hit some of those and, hey, one of us will be right and you get a winning play on the show, guaranteed. But looking at Makhachev and Garry, I mean, while Makhachev isn't an undefeated fighter, he might as well be because it's hard to find flaws in his game. I mean, we're talking about he is tied for the most consecutive wins in UFC history. 16 wins. He's tied with Anderson Silva. That's not an easy feat, especially we're not talking about 16 wins in a row in MMA. We're talking just in the octagon when he's been with the elite. And you talked about it last show. His last loss was 11 years ago.
Oh my God.
At what was it, the Cormier Gustafsson event? And I had to look up because you mentioned that. I'm like, who beat him? And it was a knockout loss, by the way, to Adriano Martins.
We all remember that like it was yesterday.
And I was curious, what did Adriano Martins do after knocking out Islam Makhachev? Where did his career go? Well, since then, he is 1-6-1 in his professional career.
Amazing.
He's won one fight since that. So at least he gets to tip his hat and say, I was the last guy to beat Makhachev. But the numbers, man, he is a tough guy to pick apart. I mean, XR percentage, 86%. You're talking elite. And that fight style always breeds that kind of expected round one. I mean, 86% is a guy who's controlling every minute of the cage, and that's what he's going to do when he gets you down. He just pressures you. Now, Garry, 69%, that's not bad. That's actually very good for a guy challenging for the belt. It's just he's facing Islam Makhachev. Now, Reed mentioned it. Garry does have a size situation here. You know, he is the longer, taller fighter here. And, you know, I was curious how that would play in Makhachev's welterweight debut when he fought for the belt against JDM. And, I mean, he ticked every box for me. Word is, and, you know, you can only trust camps so much, but word is he's stronger and looking better at 170. And I don't doubt that for an elite athlete like that he's taking it seriously and now starting to really come into form at 170. But looking at the numbers too, obviously Makhachev doesn't have a striking advantage. He's not a stand-up striker. I mean, he only puts out 2.45 significant strikes per minute. He is tough to hit, though. 1.45 significant strikes absorbed per minute. He is out of the way. He is a ghost. And next thing you know, he's grabbing your leg, right? And he's taking you down. Now, Garry, he does have that reach advantage, and if he can use it to strike, he can win a striking battle. 4.78 significant strikes landed per minute, 1.92 differential. So he's tough to hit back, and it's usually that size and range that he's starting to learn to use. 2.86 absorbed per minute. They both have knockdown scored. They've both been knocked down, but that's probably not where this lives. We're looking at the grappling, and we're talking a whole different level of grappling here. 87% control rate for Islam Makhachev in clinch and ground time. Once he closes the gap, it's essentially over for you. And we're talking about 51% time in control when he gets you on the ground. I mean, Reed said it best. If you're on the ground, you're most likely spending over 2.5 minutes on the ground and most likely losing that round. So it's tough to see a path for Garry. Now, Garry does have great takedown defense, 80% takedown defense. That's very good, especially entering championship level. It's just, is Islam a level above everything he's faced? Most likely. Now, is there a path there? Potentially. Where do the numbers go? They're going to go Islam Makhachev's way, 100%. But it does reserve and it does hold back, as you can see on the screen, tier 5. It's kind of that cautious favorite for me. And especially when you look at the odds at minus 340. I mean, my model's only seeing a 65% win probability for him. At those odds, at a guy that we kind of see as inevitable and undefeatable, or defeatable, not defeatable. 65% isn't exactly a comfortable prediction that I feel comfortable in. I'm not saying Gary's going to take this and go bet the dog. I'm just saying be cautious. Maybe don't use this if you're going to have it as a parlay, make sure you have a way out. I think the over, in the way that Reed and you guys talked about it, I think the over is the smarter, safer bet here, especially considering the odds. I think it's minus 180 right now for the over. But right now I'm reserved on actually playing Islam Makhachev here.
This is exactly the way that I see it. I love that the numbers kind of bear it out with you and Reed. To me, it's only dog or pass, right? At that price point at minus 340, it's not that I don't think that obviously the champ should be favored and Makhachev should be favored, but not that sizable for me. I do think the over is where I'm going to end up getting here at minus $1.80. And I know people are going to go, well, do you really want to lay that price point? Much more than I would laying 340, because if the propensity, Rob, is that this fight's going to hit the cards, and you're laying 340, that 3 judges see it the same way, especially if it stays standing. Like if this isn't dominant grappling and he's holding down Machado Garry for 5 rounds, and it's easy to see that the champion's going to retain the belt that way. If this stays striking, and it becomes a point counterpoint fight, that's exactly what Ian Machado Garry wants. That's where he's slick. And I mentioned kind of that John Jones comparison with those front leg kicks that he might use to deploy to keep Makhachev off of him. I could see it playing out stylistically, not so much finishing. And that's why I think the over, you can get there at over 4.5 at -1.80. And then all of a sudden, Rob, I'll tell you this, you hit the cards. I'd much rather be on the massive underdog than I'd rather be on the massive favorite if we get to one of those point counterpoint striking matchups. And I think we could see it play out like that. Again, if the takedowns come, tip your cap to the champion. Machado Garry's just defending off his back. He's got no offense that he can really muster, and it's going to look like one-way traffic here for the champ, but maybe in a boring 5-round decision. But that still gets us home in that over -1.80. Don't have a play yet on the side, but if you made me play it, that's the way I'd look. Garry by decision, because I think we're hitting the cards eventually.
I love that analysis, and you're right. Sweating out a -340 for 5 rounds, and especially if you saw at least 1 or 2.5 of those rounds being a standing battle because Garry was able to hold off maybe a couple takedowns, I'd be nervous on what those scorecards start looking like, because if he takes 2 rounds, that means he can take a third. And if he takes a third round, now you've got a huge sweat. So I'd rather get that over with at 4.5, knowing, we're talking about the only loss for Makhachev being a random knockout 11 years ago, and Garry only has 1 loss, and it was a decision. So these are tough guys. Most likely 5 rounds is what we're seeing.
Hey, I'll tell you this, if you're back of the champ here, the last thing you want to hear is we're headed for a 5th round, because at that point, you haven't been able to get him out of there. You probably haven't controlled him, and it's probably a little bit more competitive than you'd want a $3.40 favorite to be. Mackenzie Dern's not that big a favorite in the co-main event here, -225 against Gillian Robertson. Again, this is why we do the show, right? And again, I had Jordan Sherwood on, who's, of course, First Strike veteran as well, on VSiN by the Books. And his side, he loves Gillian Robertson. We love Lou Finocchiaro. He loves Mackenzie Dern. You are seeing some split, I'd say, opinions on this championship fight here at strawweight. What are the numbers showing you? And again, there's probably not a better BJJ practitioner than Mackenzie Dern on the planet.
Yeah, I think she's a 3rd-degree black belt. She's just a born natural
levels and next level
levels and levels to her jiu-jitsu. But this is one of the tougher grapplers. Also, Reed was talking about it. This is wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. Yes, everyone should prepare and just know ahead of time. We could be seeing 2 title fights that take place completely on the mat, and it's just a grind. So it may be a longer night. We may not get those finishes. But speaking of finishes, I want to give a nod to Gillian Robertson here. She has the most submission wins for a woman in the UFC, and she's also tied for the most finishes for any woman in the UFC at 10. She is, I talked about it a couple weeks ago. She's a dog, and not just an underdog. She's like an actual dog in the cage. She's a fighter. She's tough. And we've been talking about this fight a couple times. We're so excited for it, and it's crazy. And I love that it's split among the sharp minds that we respect. Sherwood, Reed, Lou. Now let's see where we land. So age, they're pretty close. Reach, it's all the same. XR percentage is my first concern for Dern. 55%. It's not something I expect out of a champion normally, but some of that did get explained by Reed when you think about the fact that she's okay being taken down. So visually, it kind of looks like she's losing a fight, but she's actually at least in it. So that can explain some of that, but it is still something I reserve myself with. Gillian Robertson's not exactly that far away at 61%. She just gets the small nod there. But look at the inside the distance. Gillian Robertson has finished 60% of her fights inside the distance, only 38% for Dern. So while she is the more decorated submission artist as far as Mackenzie Dern goes with her BJJ background, Gillian Robertson has way more finishes than she does. So striking, it's not pretty. This isn't what we're here for. And, Reed talked about it. Dern does have a small advantage in the striking, as crazy as it sounds. 3.47 significant strikes landed per minute, a negative 0.47. So she is absorbing almost 4 significant strikes per minute. But on the counter, Gillian Robertson's not really putting out a lot of volume there. Only 2.71 significant strikes landed per minute. A negative differential, very small, negative 0.15. So she does absorb 2.86. That's actually not bad. That's actually very good, especially if she's not dishing out a lot of strikes. So she does just defend well, and she's never been knocked down. But you guys mentioned it. Mackenzie Dern has been knocked down 6 times. Robertson's never knocked anyone down, so I'm not going to say it's not happening, but we're probably not looking at that. This is where this fight lives. The control rate in the clinch and ground time for Mackenzie Dern, 60%. Gillian Robertson, 77%.
Whoa.
This is kind of a fight where each one probably hasn't faced the level that they're facing. And that goes both ways, right? Mackenzie Dern probably hasn't faced someone who can grapple and wrestle the way Gillian Robertson has. And Gillian Robertson has to be cautious that she's probably never faced a BJJ practitioner like Mackenzie Dern. And I'm glad we had Reed on because it explains so much of the numbers that I see from Mackenzie Dern. Because if I told you one of these fighters only has 14 takedowns and 18% takedown accuracy, would you guess it's Mackenzie Dern? Because I would. But those are her numbers. But it's because she's inviting it in. She's inviting it in. She's trying to 16 submission attempts from Mackenzie Dern. So whether she's on top or on the bottom, she's busy keeping you guessing on where she's moving next. But Gillian Robertson, 50% of time in control when she's on the ground, similar to that Makhachev number that I just talked about. Only 41% accuracy, but she's attempting even more. Now, it's possible she won't attempt as many because it's possible Dern just invites it down. But I am so curious, and it's crazy to say because I'm curious to see what that matchup looks like on the mat. I'm curious to see if you invite someone as aggressive as Gillian Robertson on the ground and vice versa. So, neither one has great takedown defense, and that's for a reason because they know they're safe on the ground. So this is, in my head, I loved processing this fight because I'm like, I don't know which way I see it. I know which way I want to go, and that's the way the model leans too. It goes Gillian Robertson, 77% win probability. Yes, it's high for a dog. I grabbed it over the weekend at plus 210, and this is an example of being on the right side of the number because it is flown down to plus 175 this morning is what I saw. So I've got a ticket on the dog. You know that meme? I don't know if that meme's still cool where it says they got that dog in them and it's like an x-ray. That's how I picture Gillian Robertson, and that's who I hope shows up Saturday. And that's at least one and new champion I'm hoping for.
So glad the data points it out as well because you and I have been talking about this fight. It feels like for months. I don't know why we've been so excited for this fight, but we really are. And yeah, I'm right there with you. It's Gillian Robertson for me. And I look at this fight and can't you just see right now, Mackenzie Dern's like this, and she's doing the snake thing with her legs, inviting Gillian Robertson down. And she'll get down to the mat, but she'll do it intelligently. Maybe that's inside control. And all of a sudden, I see Mackenzie Dern inviting this, right? And she's on her back and she's welcoming her into her guard, which is very dangerous to be inside Mackenzie Dern's guard. And then it's Gillian Robertson posturing up with those elbows. And all of a sudden, one of those slips through and Mackenzie Dern's like, uh-oh, I don't like this so much anymore.
You get busted open suddenly. Yeah.
There it goes. And here comes that dog, D-A-double-G, that we're talking about here with Gillian Robertson. And I actually, even though the over is 3.5 rounds, I don't think Mackenzie Dern, if she can't get that submission, I don't see her winning this fight if she can't sub out Gillian Robertson. So the more opportunity for that dog to come out from Gillian Robertson's side, that's not going to bode well for the pretty face of Mackenzie Dern. I see her getting busted up. I see this thing getting really ugly inside that octagon, and that's exactly what Gillian Robertson wants. To me, this will be a dog play for me. Absolutely on the Robertson side, and so glad the numbers back it up. Look, Lou Fittipaldi is going to tell us you guys are crazy, and Mackenzie's going to sub her out. And if she does, obviously we can see that side coming, right? That she's the best JJ practitioner that we've seen on the women's side here. Totally understand that. But if Gillian can intelligently defend on the ground, she's going to be able to get her offense going, and that's where I see the real problem coming from Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah. We may be laughed at come next week.
We could.
But hey, they're underdogs for a reason. And I also want to warn people, we could see a complete stalemate on the ground, and this turns into a really ugly 5-round striking match.
We don't want that for 5 rounds.
I don't want to speak that. I just want to warn people, we're excited for what could be, but it doesn't mean that's going to happen. But you're right. If kind of similar to what we talked about in the main event, if you tell me this is going 5 rounds, and those 5 rounds have just been Dern on her back fighting off Gillian Robertson, she probably doesn't, like you said, her face probably isn't as pretty as it usually is. It's probably taken a couple elbows. And if you had to tell me who I would trust in a 5th round going at it with just everything on the line, I think it's Gillian Robertson, especially when she was plus 210, but even still at plus 175.
Yeah, Mackenzie has faded in fights too. So again, I know that she does look different. She looks better, like cardio wise. She really is. She's looked like a champion. Let's give her that. I love Mackenzie Dern. This is not a knock on Mackenzie.
Totally.
I think she's legit. I'm with you. I think the value is there on the Robertson side. I think we're getting Ann New on Saturday night. We mentioned this fight here earlier with Reed Kuhn, Vicente Luque. If you can still find that plus on his side, Rob, those are starting to get gobbled up. Have they been watching? Was there a pre-show of First Strike that I was not aware of to move these markets?
I don't believe so. And even Fighting with Numbers, which you can also catch on from me everywhere.
You gave those numbers out, Rob. That's what you did.
I don't think I did that early either. I mean, some of these numbers I looked at on Sunday and they looked great, and numbers got gobbled up and disappeared. But yeah, this is another one that you and Reed talked about, and I agree with the side. I'm on the dog here with Vicente Luque, and some of that has more to do with Tresean Gore, right, and his numbers. I mean, we're talking about a 34% XR percentage. That's not good. I think he's 3-4 in the UFC. Like, he hasn't produced a great overall UFC career. And Vicente Luque has been all over the place kind of as in his career, and this is his second middleweight fight. His first fight was against Kelvin Gastelum, first round submission. He was a 2-1 dog in that one. Now, I understand, Kelvin Gastelum sometimes not the best fighter that shows up as far as opponent quality, but I don't think you're getting that out of Tresean Gore either. I mean, he's not exactly a shining star here in the UFC. Look, I mean, these striking metrics, 3.41 significant strikes landed per minute for Tresean Gore. And then if you're watching on our YouTube channel, by the way, we have a unique YouTube channel for First Strike. Look at me, circle this number. Significant strike differential, negative 3.59. Tresean Gore absorbs 7 significant strikes per minute. So you don't have to be the sharpest striker to hit this guy in the face. He's essentially a punching bag in there. He also has 0 knockdowns. Vicente Luque has 11 knockdowns in his UFC career. So, I mean, striking, it looks like you can win it there. There's not a ton from the ground from either side. Tresean Gore actually does have 73% takedown accuracy, but it's only 8 takedowns, so it's not like he's attempting a ton either. Vicente Luque, as we know, even if he's defensively falling to the back, he can get a submission in there. So the numbers agree with Reed. It goes Vicente Luque. I actually grabbed him at a much better price than -105. I think I got him at +125. So once again, I jumped on a number I thought was good, and that number moved, and he's now -105. I don't know if he's a favorite. Maybe this finishes at -110, somewhere around there. But if you're finding a -105, at least if you believe in me and Reed, I would grab that.
I'll be grabbing the $1.05. I was hoping would stay at plus money and go the other way. I got greedy, Rob, but I'm right there with you guys. Love the Luque side here. Very quickly, Neil Magny. We know age, Father Time is undefeated, sadly. Love Neil Magny. Root for Neil Magny. Small dog against Ramiz Brahimaj here. Brahimaj about a $1.30 betting favorite. We know it's been going around, at least in social media this week, that when Magny loses, sometimes he gets submitted. That seems to happen an awful lot here. What are the numbers showing you here in this fight?
So, yes, age is not his friend here. 39 years old. But, man, the guy's just kind of been a journeyman. He started his career so long ago in the UFC. You're talking a professional record of 31-15. That is a long career. 80-inch reach, not 80-inch reach advantage, but 80-inch reach, an 8-inch reach advantage is what I meant to say.
80 would be something we'd have to do show on.
Swinging. I don't know if he fits in the cage, but XR percentage, 57% for Magny. That's not great, and that's over a very long career. But Ramiz Brahimaj, not exactly a long career, and is already 38% XR percentage. He is a red flag for me right there, just off the bat. In the striking department, Ramiz, he doesn't put a lot out. 2.29 significant strikes per minute, a negative 0.98 differential. Neil Magny, on the other side, has a positive differential there and only absorbs 2.44. Now, Neil Magny's chin has been cracked a couple times, knocked down 11 times in his UFC career. Ooh. But Ramiz only 1 knockdown. Can he get it out of Neil? Potentially, as you mentioned, sometimes when he loses ugly. But Neil Magny is going to go out there and give you a full effort. I will say that. 40% control rate in the clinch and ground time. 64 takedowns. You don't picture him as a big ground guy, but 64 takedowns at 40% accuracy. He does have a little bit of that aggressor if he needs to on the ground. Not much from Ramiz, and only a 45% takedown defense from Ramiz. The model lands on the old dog here, Neil Magny. Now, here's an example of I did not get the best number. I took him at minus 105, and kind of the opposite happened. He moved to plus 110. I wish I could get plus 110, but it does see a chance here. And, I got to talk about the elephant in the room, I guess, is that tier 1 live dogs have been cold in my model. And actually, they just haven't shown up for weeks. It's been interesting. I haven't gotten another one since kind of that little cold drought I hit with the dogs. All of a sudden, they're popping up this week. We don't have to get all of them. Let's just get a couple of them home. But Neil Magny would be a great way to start the night, because Ramiz, even if you look at what he's accomplished in the UFC, I mean, I had to peel up who he has actually beat in the UFC, and we're talking about Austin Vanderford, Billy Ray Goff, and Mickey Gall are his 3-fight win streak. And then before that, he lost to Themba Gorimbo. Let me tell you, that's 4 guys who are not in the UFC anymore. I think Neil Magny uses his veteranship to get us a dog win here.
I'll tell you the other thing I do like is potential finishing potential here. At $1.60, it's getting a little pricey at 2.5, but Rob, when Magny goes for it, he doesn't want to get paid by the minute either. And if he sees a vulnerability there, to try to look for whether it's a submission or get him out there with the KO, I like that under a little bit at minus $1.60, kind of give me that 2-way out, if you will, for 2.5 rounds. I don't know that Magny wants to go 15 hard minutes and win a decision. Let's get Brahim Maja out of there earlier rather than later. Rob, great stuff, man. We always tell everybody, please subscribe to First Strike here on VSiN. Tell some friends about it. We love doing the show, and we think it can be very advantageous for people that listen and watch out there, too, with those changing numbers. That's why we do it on a Wednesday. Rob, great stuff. As always, my man. We'll do it again next week. Maybe have some trader cards we'll bring back to the show next week.
I'll be ready.
All right, you'll be ready. I know you will be. So for you and for and certainly for Reed Kuhn, thanks for watching First Strike here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.